Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
Eating healthy isn't always easy. Good nutrition leads to better health and weight loss. Plus, eating the right foods has many benefits to your overall health that you might not even know about. Welcome to Healthy Living for Life, a show dedicated to helping you do just that. I'm your host, Sarah Medley. Today, we not only talk about the benefits of healthy eating, but also how to make it easy, convenient, and affordable. Stay tuned. Welcome back. More than 2/3 of Americans are overweight or obese, often a result of poor eating habits. Helping you lose weight is just one of the many benefits of a healthy diet. This morning, Teresa Hicks, a dietitian and certified diabetes educator, is here to talk about the many, often unknown reasons why eating healthy is good for you. Teresa, thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start talking about healthy foods. Give us some examples of healthy foods and why that's important.
Well, there's nutrition, of course, is a big topic. And so even just answering that question, we want to think about what foods are healthy, but also the amount of that food, how often we eat that food, and why we eat food. So nutrition, we want to put it always into the bigger picture. Some foods that have a lot of research behind them that have some known health benefits are plant foods. There's not many foods with more research behind them than plants. We know that plants are incredibly healthy for us. And sometimes we just talk about fruits or vegetables, but I like to open it up and make it a bigger topic and include really all plants. If we think about beans, lentils, nuts, avocados, some of those other items that are plant foods, whole grains, they all have many benefits. One of the reasons why, do you want me to talk about why?
Absolutely.
Okay. My favorite thing about plants is plants have something called phytochemicals. And phyto is the Greek word for plant, and then chemicals. So they are plant chemicals. And those chemicals help that plant grow and be healthy in nature and survive in different environments. When we eat those foods, we get those same or some of those benefits from eating those plant chemicals. Things that we know about, maybe like antioxidants, many people have heard about, but flavonoids, carotenoids, some of these other health benefits, as well as vitamins and minerals and other nutrients. So plants are a big part of eating healthy, including lots of plants in our diet. Another kind of category of healthy foods are paying close attention to healthy fats. So some of those healthy fats are, many people have heard of omega-3s. Those are things found in fish oils, walnuts. Those are shown to be anti-inflammatory and to have health benefits for our heart and our overall system, as well as monounsaturated fats like olive oil and nuts and things that we know from research done on the Mediterranean diet that have a variety of health benefits and are associated with longevity, so a longer life, but also health span, not just living longer, but living healthier.
Can you talk about chronic conditions and nutrition? So we read a lot about heart conditions and other problems. Talk about the nutrition aspect of helping us prevent heart conditions, for example.
Yeah, that's great. A lot of times when we think about eating healthy with chronic disease, people want to know about, what diet do I need for heart disease or diabetes? But what we really want to think about is how do we eat healthy to prevent those? And the diets really aren't much different. It's just that we tend to not implement those diets until there's a problem. But the same things that work for someone to keep a healthy heart after they've had a chronic disease help to prevent or delay that chronic disease. So the same general staples, eating many plant foods, focusing on healthy fats, getting plenty of fiber, paying attention to, trying to decrease processed foods that have unwanted sugars and unhealthy fats. The diets are very similar for preventing and also treating chronic conditions.
You mentioned diabetes. What does a healthy diet look like for someone who suffers from diabetes?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a question I hear a lot as a diabetes educator. So with diabetes, first of all, we want to remember that anyone with any chronic condition needs an individualized meal plan, because you can give 100 people a different diet, and if they've got a chronic condition, they're going to respond a little different. So a person with diabetes should meet with their diabetes educator, their dietitian, to come up with an individualized meal plan. But generally speaking, again, the diabetes diet is the same diet I am on without diabetes, which is a general healthy diet. So with diabetes of course is diagnosed when you have higher blood sugar than normal, right? So there's some criteria that are set. When your blood sugar is over this certain amount, then we say that a person has diabetes. Well, so that means that we tend to focus on just blood sugar. But with diabetes, the number one complication, the number one reason people die when they have diabetes is actually heart attack and stroke. So your blood pressure, your cholesterol, they are just as important as managing blood sugar. And an easy way to remember that is the ABCs of diabetes. So A stands for A1C, which is average blood sugar. B is blood pressure. C is cholesterol. So eating healthy to maintain all three of those puts a person at their lowest possible risk of having a complication related to diabetes.
So in the few seconds that we have left, let's switch gears and talk about bone health. Can you give us a couple of examples of good food for bone health?
Yes. So the main ones we typically think about, of course, are calcium and vitamin D. Vitamin D, many people are low in, so I would recommend people get their levels checked as part of their annual blood draw. Vitamin K, as well as some general nutrition.
Excellent. We're going to pause here for a short break, and we will continue this conversation with Teresa after these messages by talking about how to shop smarter and eat healthier without breaking the bank. Don't go away. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Teresa, thanks so much for staying with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's talk about unhealthy foods. Give us some examples of what is really unhealthy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we talk about unhealthy foods, we want to remember that there's not a food you can't ever have again. Of course, with eating healthy, with having a chronic disease, it's something we're doing for the rest of our lives. So there's always going to be room for that special dessert, that special family tradition that you have. But we're thinking about frequency, right? The day-to-day things are what really affects our health. And the day-to-day things we want to pay attention to that can really have long-lasting harmful effects on our health, but also our immediate, the way we feel, our energy, our mood, our ability to concentrate, are things like sugar, or just refined carbohydrates. So when the thing that always comes to mind, of course, is sugar-sweetened beverages, so soda or energy drinks or any drink with added sugar. Research is firm, is solid, harmful, increased risk for heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver disease. It also, more emerging research that it also affects our mood and causes problems for people who have depression and some other mental health issues. So concentrated sweets are something we definitely want to have very infrequently. And then sodium, of course, would be another one. Sodium when we have sodium in our body, our kidney works to excrete sodium, right? But it can only excrete so much. So if we have a diet high in sodium, it stays in our bloodstream, and then our body will try to dilute that sodium and bring in fluids from our tissues. And when we have a high concentration of water in our blood vessels, that's causing pressure on our artery walls. And that makes it a lot of tension, which can cause tears or agitation to the blood vessel wall, making plaques and things easily build up. So sodium is something we also want to be really aware of. And 70% of the sodium we get in the American diet comes from processed foods. So anytime we can choose a whole food, anytime we can cook a food ourselves instead of buying something that's prepackaged or frozen and heat up, we're doing a tremendous favor to our health.
And the sodium you're talking about is what we would call salt.
Yes, yeah.
And I remember being frustrated when I see people going out to eat and before they even taste their food, they're salting it. So I'm assuming that should be a no-no as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the thing about salt that I think is positive and interesting is that our taste buds can adapt to more salt, and they can also adapt to less salt. So if you are a person who has been eating a high sodium diet, a high salt diet, and that's what you like because that's what you're used to, understand that cutting back, it gets easier with time, and then there will come a time when when you'll go back to maybe your old way or try a food you used to like, it will not taste good. It will taste too salty. So be patient with yourself. You can cut back on sodium and then even enjoy that.
One reason I've heard people say it's hard to eat healthy is because healthy food is so expensive. So talk to us about that. Is it really true that the healthy foods are that much more expensive?
You know, you can eat healthy for a lot less money. There are some tricks, and I feel like I am an expert on this because I have 2 boys that are growing and eat so much food right now that I have to really pay attention to my food budget. One of the biggest tips I have for people when I talk about trying to eat healthy and expand your budget is utilize beans and lentils. They are a fantastic protein source, a protein alternative to meat. And meat, of course, is one of the most expensive things we buy. So for some people, I'm from Eastern Montana. I know, I'm from beef country, but meatless meals, even if that sounds too weird, you can stretch meat by adding beans. So for example, if I'm making tacos, it's 50% beans and 50% meat, and I just dramatically cut the cost of that meal. I've been able to stretch my meat because nothing's cheaper than beans and lentils. So that's one tip. Another one is, when frozen foods on sale, frozen vegetables are on sale, buy them, stock up because they're going to last. And then buying foods in bulk when you're not paying for the brand name, the advertising, the manufacturing, that's another great way to cut costs.
You talked about meats. How about produce? So are there tips? I'm assuming frozen, perhaps?
Yeah, so frozen is, you can get frozen on sale. And so stocking up is probably the best way, I think, to save money on that. Buying those, there's some bigger grocery stores that you can buy them in bulk and they're pretty cheap. So that's another way to do it. And then buying things when they're on sale, which one way to do that is to increase your cooking flexibility. So, you don't want to necessarily go out and buy a bunch of food you've never eaten before, but maybe one week, if Brussels sprouts are on sale, you can challenge yourself to try to cook Brussels sprouts if you never have before. And the more you're able to cook and eat, the more you're able to take advantage of foods that go on sale.
So one of the things we see in the grocery store in the few seconds we have left is a lot of organic food. Is organic food really better for us than non-organic?
Well, there are some slight benefits to organic food. There's some less pesticides and slightly more nutrition. But if it's between organic and not produce, no question, non-organic is fantastic.
Thanks, Teresa, for that great information. We need to pause for another break, but coming up next, How to stick to healthy foods even when you feel like you don't have the time. Teresa has more tips for us right after this. Welcome back to Healthy Living for Life. Thanks for staying with us. Sometimes we have the best intentions to eat healthier, but our schedules, time, or even our energy levels get in the way. So we grab something quick, and that usually means an unhealthy choice. Teresa Hicks is still with us. Thank you, Teresa, for joining us.
I'm having a great time, thanks.
Talk to us about that convenient food and what can we do that's quick and easy but still healthy?
Well, some of the foods that are quick and easy are foods like nuts, fruit. There's even some easy prepared meals. Like you can buy lentils in a bag now where you can heat them up in 60 seconds. There's the little canned tuna take and go lunches. So there is a large variety of items you can now take in addition to those just ready-made natural things like nuts and fruit. In fact, I ate that in the car for breakfast as I drove here today.
What about grab and go? So, you're running errands and you're really hungry. Can you choose healthy?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're thinking of, a drive-through, is that what you're thinking of?
I'm thinking a drive-through.
Okay, so restaurants now, there's usually a couple items at each restaurant, right? They have that niche that they're going for. And so you can find something typically at each restaurant. There's Wendy's, McDonald's, they've got salads, and some of them are pretty decent looking with some grilled chicken and such on them. Chipotle has some fresh items. They've got the Panda Express with some fresh items. And nowadays that you'll even see that they have the calorie count, et cetera, right there posted. So even if you're trying to go through a drive-through, you can typically find a healthy choice at most restaurants now.
So what about you don't have a lot of time, you get home from work and you need to cook healthy. What could one do to be better prepared so when you come home from work, you are eating healthy, but you're not spending 2 hours at it?
The best way is to be prepared, and for someone like myself, that usually happens on like a Sunday, right? I have to be, when I have the time, I'm gonna cook, so that when I don't have the time, I don't have to. A couple of things that you can do, whenever you cook a meal, if you're able, freeze that other half. It helps cut down on food waste, one, because the leftovers don't always get eaten, but if you freeze the other half of that meal for another meal, that's gonna be eaten. So you have some food in the freezer that are ready to go meals. When you cook some of the staples, like say maybe you have brown rice or quinoa, cook enough for 2 meals instead of 1. Have things like hard-boiled eggs ready to go. So it's really more preparing and prepping and having things handy, because just plan on having some meals where you won't have time. And what are you gonna do? So you're ready for those. You're ready for those times.
So spices, some of us like spices. Mm-hmm. And so are there any that are particularly beneficial for us that we might think about using?
I mean, all spices are great. So herbs and spices, herbs are the leaves of plants. And like I talked about earlier, all plants have these plant chemicals, these antioxidants, these amazing health benefits. They're concentrated little health components that you can add to your food. And then spices are the roots or the seeds or the ground up things of plants, again with these plant compounds. So depending on what food you cook, of course, there's different spices you'll add or different herbs you're going to add, but they all have health benefits and they're different, so that's great. Of course, there's some in the news more than others, like turmeric is in the news a lot. It has anti-inflammatory properties and may have some, things for brain health that might help us keep a healthy cognition as we age. But really, all herbs and spices have different health properties to them. So anytime we add them, we're kind of upping the nutrient value of our food.
We talked a bit about fast food restaurants and drive-thrus. So what if I'm going out for dinner tonight and I want to choose a more healthy option? Give me some advice about that.
Okay. Well, a broth-based soup is always a pretty solid choice, right? So a broth-based soup, if that's on the menu. A salad with a grilled meat, that's a solid menu item. Anything grilled or baked versus deep fried. If it comes with a side of fries, and it always does, you can say, can I get a side salad instead of fries, or they'll sometimes have steamed vegetables, depending on the restaurant you're going to, and they're used to that substitution. I always get that substitution. No one's ever told me I couldn't get, vegetables or a salad instead of fries. So those are some, easy ones, and obviously, maybe don't go for that soda, but some water, some iced tea instead, yeah.
So some of us have a sweet tooth. So talk to us about choices of sweets. We have to have something after dinner.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's of course natural sweet foods. Yogurt, there's some health benefits. There's also some added sugar, but I count that as dessert in my house. So if we want dessert, yogurt counts for dessert. Fruit is naturally sweet. And then of course if you have, if you're somewhere special, and you are served birthday cake, or you're not gonna say no, you can have a small piece of that. That fits into a healthy meal plan, but savor it. Taste every bit of that. How does that, what is the texture? What is the flavor? So that you are satisfied with less. And there's research behind that. That's called mindful eating, intuitive eating, and that helps us be satisfied with less. So it's okay to have the real thing too, but just in moderation.
So in the few seconds we have left, can you talk about portion control and end with that? I remember hearing about all things in moderation, and we are eating too much. So talk about portion control.
Okay. In America, we tend to eat till we're full. And I like to say practice eating till you're no longer hungry. And there's a big difference between no longer hungry and full. And that's something we work on with each meal.
Excellent. Thank you, Teresa, for that great information. And I would like to thank our viewers for tuning in every week. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and learned about your choices for healthier eating. Until next time, stay fit, stay well, and stay healthy for life with Healthy Living for Life.
Healthy Living for Life is brought to you by Mountain Pacific Quality Health. We'd love to hear from you. If you have suggestions for future programs, visit our website at mpqhf.org or call us at 406-443-4020. You can also catch us on YouTube by visiting our website and clicking on the YouTube icon. Special thanks to Fire Tower Coffee House and Roasters. Production facilities provided by Video Express Productions.